What we see increasingly is that engaged patients have better outcomes. We know that engaged patients adhere to their medical regimens. And we know that adherence is a major stumbling block for improving outcomes.
With OpenNotes, everything that the doc puts in his notes or her notes is available for the patient to actually see, ask questions about, and to interact on with their docs. For us, it was the next step. Taking the caregiving from us being active and patients being passive to patients being active and us being mentors. Overall, it's transformational.
I think the beauty of what we've done is how simple it is. Sharing notes with patients doesn't take great scholarship or something to understand that that might change the way you behave. And that's exactly what's happened. It's been a very simple intervention. We just flicked a switch.
OpenNotes took place in 3 very different sites around the country. We're here in Boston at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is a major urban teaching hospital. And our patients have the choice of going to many different hospitals in Boston. Danville, Pennsylvania is a very rural area, and patients have fewer choices. And finally, at Harborview in Seattle, which is a safety net hospital, probably half of their patients don't have computers.
We serve the most vulnerable in our community, patients with multiple dual diagnoses, significant chronic illness. Many of our patients are homeless. Many of them live in respite centers. But what we found is that just because you're homeless doesn't mean you don't have access to great communication. Having that challenging population access their medical record and embrace and be part of their care, we think is a great success.
I believe it's an ethical imperative that our patients know everything that we know.
Your weight looks pretty good today. Your blood pressure is good.
So what do we have to do? We have to redesign how care is given.
Maybe it's time for a stress test again before we do the scope.
You know, there's the legitimate concern that patients might misinterpret something, but that's really paternalistic. And as doctors, isn't it better to know that and to deal with it rather than just to avoid it?
The technology itself is relatively simple. The culture change is not simple.
So how's the diet going?
Well, I feel like
We're going to provide you with access to everything, the entire doctor note, and not just a note that is dumbed down for patients, but the doctor's note as written for the medical community.
Joanne comes in today to follow up on her hyperlipidemia and her weight period. Blood pressure is mildly elevated.
There's a lot of fear about that, but what we're discovering is patients get a lot of value out of it. And I think in the future, this sort of technology will really be a differentiator for the institutions that choose to embrace it. Our institution is willing to try it in a big way. All of our patient notes are going to be available for patients.
The game changer for the institutions we've been working with were the results. Doctors, they were very surprised by how little impact it had on them. After a year, we said, you have a right to drop out. And not one doctor dropped out. More than 90% of our patients in OpenNotes chose to read their notes. 99% of patients said they wanted to go on with this. But even more importantly for me as a doctor, more than 80% said they felt more in charge of their health care. That's a mind-blowing result for a very simple intervention. It has enormous implications for the quality of care, for the costs of care, for outcomes, for the populace.